Hello, today is Wednesday, July 9th, and welcome to episode 474 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Fellow Jessica Jones, and I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellows Bishop Garrison and Amy Mitchell. Welcome, team. Okay, in today's episode, we're talking about the ins and outs of the U.S. approach to Ukraine. Last week, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reportedly, without informing the White House, paused a critical weapons shipment to Ukraine, which may or may not have blindsided the State Department, Congress, Ukraine, and our European allies. It was the third time this year that Hegseth has acted alone to halt Ukraine aid, despite Pentagon analysis showing that the shipments pose no threat to America's own readiness. But within days, President Trump kind of did an about face after a tense phone call with Putin last week that ended with Russia launching record drone attacks in Kyiv. And after what Zelensky called their best conversation yet, Trump declared that he's not happy with Putin and ordered the weapons to move forward again. We even got an expletive. Apparently, in a cabinet meeting, he said, "We got a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, if you want to know the truth." He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless. Seems a while to have gotten to that message, but okay, I'm glad he picked it up. So this back and forth comes as Russia masses tens of thousands of troops for a summer offensive, and Ukraine's air defenses risk being overwhelmed. So a lot to cover here. Bishop, I'm going to turn first to you. Is it unusual? Is it newsworthy that our defense secretary kind of halted aid without really coordinating that it seems like a lot of the rest of the White House was surprised? What does this mean for U.S. Ukraine moving forward?
Well, yeah, it's great to be back on the pod, guys. It's been a bit. Good to see all of you. First and foremost, this is both one, it's a positive thing. I think there are positives to take away from this. One, as you mentioned, Jess, President Trump has recognized that President Putin potentially can't be taken at his word. And that's something that is taking a little bit of time to get here, but it's important that we did get here, and we need to recognize that. Also, with President Zelensky, he's building a stronger relationship. And that's crucial for our ongoing global stability and to halting the aggression posed by Putin and Russian forces. So that's part one. Part two is the complexity of the situation on our side domestically in terms of chain of command. As you mentioned, apparently these were unilateral moves to halt weapons shipments from the Pentagon as it's being reported. Without the knowledge and support of the White House. That is a key element to this. I think you're going to see White House officials continuing to kind of track this down and understand where the breakdown in communication took place. There were talks that Russian forces have been using toxic and chemical weapons in some of these attacks, and that the White House and potentially Pentagon leadership were unaware. And that it's that the IC, the intelligence community, that is tracking this more in depth. So there are a lot of pieces internally in terms of communication, in terms of orders that we need to get a hold of and understand moving forward, because this situation is only going to become more complex now that we are, at least in the language used, going to hold Russia accountable to some degree. We're going to properly support Ukraine. It's only going to exacerbate a lot of these already existing communication problems if we don't nip it in the bud right now.
Yeah, Amy, some of the news reports that have come out lately start with the top line of who's really shaping and leading on U.S. defense policy right now. Can you give us your insight? What's going on in DoD? Who's calling the shots? Is there someone calling the shots?
Well, I think what we learned in Trump's first term, when we had Secretary of Defense roulette and ran through 4 secretaries in a 9-month span, that there's only one person running our national security, and that is the president himself. And the White House in this second term has made it very clear that decisions all come from the White House, not from the agencies. The agencies are merely implementers. So the Pentagon making these decisions unilaterally, which normally, regularly would be coordinated through, say the National Security Council or the National Security Advisor, with whom, currently we now have a stand-in. Secretary Rubio is the de facto NSA, that the Pentagon has made these decisions. They've taken the White House by surprise, And it was clear at the cabinet meeting that Secretary Hegseth even was surprised when the president publicly countered him. And whether or not Hegseth knew that going into that meeting, that he'd have to sit there and say that his decision had been reversed. Hegseth was not chosen to quote unquote run the Pentagon or our national security. He was put in as an implementer of Trump's vision, period, full stop. Doesn't matter how many loyalists are in the building. These are not decisions that he has been given to make. And it would serve him well to remember that and, kind of go back to his video clips and push-ups and, visits to bases. He is merely an instrument to the president. And, it's not just Ukraine that we're seeing this at. The other surprise was the review of AUKUS that was announced last week that took everyone by surprise. Obviously, Congress, maybe they'll step in. Senator McConnell has already made a few statements on this issue that, we can't have a B team essentially running forward, putting out what they want versus what the White House wants.
No, I agree. I think, between Hegseth and we've been hearing stories about Bridge Colby, who's Undersecretary of Policy at DOD, also kind of maybe swimming outside of his lanes. And you wonder how quickly the White House might start to wrap them on the knuckles once they lose sight of the message. And I wonder, Bishop, to your point about whether one of the good news, as you pointed out, was that President Trump seems to be kind of coming to the conclusion that Putin can't be trusted. Like talks aren't going to go anywhere. But I wonder if that actually changes the result, though, or any strategy moving forward, whether he actually comes down hard on Putin like he did maybe say Iran, right? Like, I don't know if there's a willingness.
Consistency has been an ongoing issue in terms of both messaging and policy here. So it remains kind of like we don't know. Like it depends on what's said in the next phone call or conversation that maybe spark some interest on some other idea or aspect of the ongoing conflict. So that is an ongoing problem. When I say communications, I mean also finding a way to have some stability in the overall policy too. Like it's the message, the messenger, and the content. Like it's all of it combined. And to your point, just like right now, we have not seen the level of stability necessary for this type of geopolitical debate and discussion, and to alleviate tensions. We just haven't. So we'll see is a part of it, unfortunately.
Well, to Bishop's point, do we have a policy? I mean, that has been unclear. Beyond executive orders, do we have a national security policy at the moment? It seems to be kind of ad hoc. And then you have, again, Congress kind of running out ahead, led by Lindsey Graham, saying, hey, the sanctions package is ready to drop right now. Let's go.
Yeah, so I will say, and I know we're coming up on time, I'll say that there seems to be more of a swell of support in helping Ukraine, even from the further right of the party than we've seen recently. We have seen some motion there. I think the overall, and we can, this is a fault line, the overall idea is that people want tensions resolved and they want the war to stop. The question is, well, what does that actually look like? Because Putin is not going to allow for any of the land and territory that they've been able to capture and control to go back to Ukraine. He wants to see Ukraine fall back under whatever his future vision is of a Russian Federation and a new USSR, however he's looking at that, whether or not we see that as being reasonable at all. So being able to recognize that piece and say, well, tensions can't just dissipate and, evaporate back into the ether. Like we have to have something substantial in order to make that. That's a part of, I think, the gap that we are missing in the overall policy. It can't just be an end to the war. It's got to be, well, what comes next? What is the stability, the result of ending that look like? And to your point, I don't think they have that.
Yeah, well, it's the same problem that the Biden administration had, right?
With it was an issue with like just flipping a switch and turning off Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't do that, and we saw that play out in real time. So this isn't even like a political gotcha debate part. This really is about the geopolitical community and what ending these types of conflicts really should and does look like. And yeah. Sorry.
But hopefully, in the immediate term, to your point, Bishop, stability. So our partners, especially those in Ukraine, know what to plan for and what's coming, because there's real world implications for cutting off material shipment, right? Like they're feeling the brunt of it in a way that we don't.
What
And
fun
we didn't
is
even
that,
get into
Jess?
the defense industrial base pieces and how, and what it means for them too. So yeah.
Yep. So a lot to unpack. We'll keep following. That's a wrap. Thanks, guys. Thanks to Taylor Lane, Kelly Crawley, Natalie Varma, Claude Jennings. Wow, that is a lot of thank yous. You guys do a lot of work for helping us putting together today's episode. Join us on Friday, July 11th for another episode of Fault Lines, NSI's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check us out there. And if you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.